And wherever they turn their faces, is that they are turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. هم الذين علموا, they are those who know, أن الله بديع السماوات والأرض, that Allah is the wondrous creator of the heavens and the earth. So the name of Allah, Al-Badi', the wondrous creator. In everything He creates, even if it might be similar to something else, it's unique. Every moment is a unique creation. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even two people, both of them are people, but every human being, even excuse me, identical twins are unique. وَإِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونُ. And what else did they know? That if Allah decrees something, He says to it, be, and it is. Allah does whatever He wants. هُمَ الَّذِينَ يَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ حَقَّ تِلَاوَتِهِ. And they are those who recite the book and give it its due right, or that read the book and put it into practice. هم الذين اتقوا يوما لا تجزي نفس عن نفس شيئا. They are those that fear a day that no soul can help another soul. While we're here in the dunya, we can help one another, but on the Day of Judgment, no soul can help another soul. And the only exception here is those who Allah Ta'ala gives permission to intercede for others. هم الذين استبغوا بصبغة الله. They are those whose that hearts are colored with the coloring of Allah. هم الذين أخلصوا أعمالهم لله. They are those who that are sincere in the acts that they do for the sake of Allah. We're going to be speaking about sincerity today in etiquette with the Quran. هم الذين علموا أن لله المشرق والمغرب. They are those who know that to Allah belongs what is in the east and west. يهدي من يشاء, and that He guides whom He wills إلى صراط مستقيم. And He guides whoever He wills to the straight path. هم الذين اتبعوا الرسول. They are those who follow the messenger. هم الذين علموا أن الله ليس بغافل عما يعملون. They are those who know that Allah Ta'ala is not unaware of everything that it is that they do. And that traits go on, and the traits go on, and the traits go on, and the traits go on. This is why it's so important that we read the book of Allah Ta'ala with understanding, and make an intention every time that we read the book of Allah Ta'ala that we put those blessed traits into practice, inshallah ta'ala. Right. So what page are we on in the English translation? We're on page 10. تفضل. أيوة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. From the book Etiquette with the Quran by Imam Abu Zakaria Yahya النووي نفعنا الله به وبعلومه في الدارين آمين إلى أن قال Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu stated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Indeed, Allah Mighty and Glorious says, Whoever shows enmity to a friend of mine, I have declared war upon him. It is established in the Sahihain that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Whoever prays the morning prayer is under the guardianship of Allah Most High, and Allah Most High does not demand of you something that is under His guardianship. The two venerable sheikhs, Abu Hanifa and Al-Shafi'i, radiyallahu anhuma, said, If the scholars are not the friends, awliya of Allah, then Allah has no friends. The Imam, the Hadith Master, Abu al-Qasim ibn Asakir, radiyallahu anhu, said, Know, my brother, and may Allah make you and us suitable for His pleasure. Make us among those who fear Him and observe His duty with right observance. That the flesh of scholars is a poison, and Allah's custom with those who disparage them is well known. Disparage them is well known. Whoever utters defamation regarding the scholars with his tongue, Allah Most High afflicts him before his death with the death of his heart. And let those who go against His command beware lest an affliction befall the more painful torment.
Ya Allah. Alhamdulillah, what a blessing to be able to read a book of a nasih, someone who's giving us good advice. So this is still the third chapter. The chapter on fi ikram ahl al-Quran wa nahi an ida'ihim. So this is about honoring the people of the Quran and the prohibition of harming them in any way, with the tongue working against them physically in any way, any type of harm. So the next hadith he mentions is on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu an Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam أن الله عز وجل قال, that Allah عز وجل, that he said, من آذى لي وليا فقد آذنته بالحرب. Translate here as whoever shows enmity to a friend of mine, I have declared war upon him. Ya Latif. And which one of us can bear the Lord of the heavens and the earth waging war upon us? Khalas, we will be destroyed. So it translates here as whoever shows enmity to a friend of mine. Man ada li, right? That this friend of Allah Ta'ala belongs to Allah. Man ada li, right? This friend of Allah belongs to Allah. Waliyan. And this is what we want to do. If you live for Allah Ta'ala, you will belong to Allah. And then, subhanAllah, the way that Allah Ta'ala will take care of you and protect you is that not like the way that He'll take care of the general believers. Allah Ta'ala in general protects the believers. Allahu waliyyu alladhina amanu. Allah is the guardian of the people who believe. But He subhanahu wa ta'ala especially takes care of His awliya that move up to this higher degree of wilayah. Didn't we take that verse today? Ala inna awliya Allah la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. That was today. This indicates the wilaya khasa. So the wilaya amma is every believer is a wali insofar as Allah is their guardian. And that by virtue of their iman, they have a protection. But then the more you devote yourself to Allah and you then belong to Allah by going against your nafs, fulfilling His command, giving preference to what He wants over what you want, then you move up to the wilaya khasa. That Allah Ta'ala tells us who these people are. Is that after saying, Allah inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. These are people who do not fear nor do they grieve. Alladhina amanu wa kanu yattaqun. They're people of iman, they believe, and they're people of taqwa. They move up in the degrees of mindfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah Ta'ala goes on to say, Lahum al-bushra fil hayati dunya wa fil akhirah. These people will have a glad tidings here in this world, before the hereafter, and in the hereafter. La tabdila li kalimatillah. There's no changing the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Jalla Jalla was saying that these people will have a special life here in this world. And so Imam al-Nawawi is going somewhere in this discussion. He's first presenting it. So this is a hadith Qudsi. And again, remember we said the hadith Qudsi tends to have a meaning that relates to the spiritual path and the connection of the servant to his Lord. Here, what greater thing for us to know that we could become awliya of Allah. When we translate in English as friends of Allah, yani it falls short. And that, how did it translate it today? Dr. Mustafa Khattab, his close servants. So wali is a close servant or a protective friend. There's different ways we can render that in English, but ultimately it's a special connection that that servant, even though they're like other human beings, they have a physical body, they have features, there's human side to them, but they're beloved to Allah. Oh, what greater thing to be. And then if you harm them, Allahu Akbar, the Lord of the heavens and the earth defends them. So Allah Ta'ala in general protects the believers, as we mentioned, right? Inna Allah yudafi'u anil ladhina aminu. Allah protects the ones who, the believers who believe. Protects the ones who believe. And if that's a general protection He gives to the believers, what then about the awliya? What then about the anbiya? Where Allah Ta'ala calls out one of these people who spoke ill of the Prophet ﷺ. And then how? That he's just getting exposed by the Lord of the heavens and the earth. Bi kitabillah. Right? ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم فستبصر ويبصرون بأيكم المفتون إن ربك أعلم من هو ضل عن سبيله وأعلم من المهدي فلا تطيع المكذبين وَدُّوا لَوْ تُدْهِنُ فَيُدْهِنُونَ وَلَا تُطِعْ كُلَّ حلاف مهين هماز منشاء مناع للخير معتد عتل بعد ذلك زنيم إن كان ذا مال وبنين. Look at what Allah Ta'ala exposes this individual. And they say that just as if you send salawat upon the Prophet and do something good, you get tenfold back from Allah Ta'ala. And if you say something bad about the Prophet, you get tenfold back worse. And so it goes both ways. And we want to ultimately be ones who that praise and love the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whoever harms and shows enmity to one of my awliya, I have declared war against that individual. And there's only two people that Allah Ta'ala declares war against. Who's the first? The one who deals with interest. And the second is the one that shows enmity to one of his awliya. And if Allah declares war about you, your life will be shattered into pieces. And it's one of the quickest ways to end with a su'al khatima, a bad seal. And this is why you have to be careful. Every night you're supposed to treat it like Laylatul Qadr, and you'll be good. And every person you meet, treat that person like it's Khidr. If you treat every night like Laylatul Qadr, and every person like Khidr, you'll be good. And be careful, because you never know, subhanAllah, who's who. You never know. And I remember being in the United States of America here. We were in Brooklyn. And we were with our teacher, Sayyid Habib Ali Jifri. He delivered a lecture at Masjid al-Taqwa, Imam Siraj's Masjid. And we were in the street. And there was this Bengali man who was unassuming, didn't even really speak English very well, who kept following Habib Ali around. And people were getting annoyed. And finally someone kind of just like indicated to him. Habib Ali stopped that person who tried to indicate to that person who was a little bit rude to him. He says, do you not know who this is? He says that this person is that there's tribulations being warded off from this area because of this individual. And he comes in and out of the masjid, and most people don't even know him and doesn't even speak English very well, and right, simple clothing and things like that. Just walking on the streets of New York. But he just gravitated towards Habib Ali because the people of Allah know each other. And subhanAllah, you never know who's who and who. So it's better just to have a good opinion of people and seek everybody as everyone is khidr and have adab. But really, it's when you show enmity to someone because of their sainthood, their wilayah. That's where it gets really dangerous. And if you just don't know, you're likely to still have a tribulation come your way, but it's not going to be serious that Allah is going to wage war against you. The best thing is just to have adab. That's why Makhrama from the Ba'ari tradition said, Man arada salama, whoever wants safety, fata'addab ta'addab. Adab, safety lies in adab. Just have manners. There's no way to draw near to Allah Ta'ala without adab. There's no way to achieve the higher degrees of closeness to Allah without adab. The whole matter is one of manners. You want to start seeing the Prophet in your dreams, that you want to draw near to the Prophet and have even that greater experience than that, adab. It requires adab, adab, adab. And this is one of the most important things of all. So then, وَثَبَتَ فِي الصَّحِيحَيْنِ. So this hadith has been firmly established in the Sahihain. So when we say the Sahihain, that's the dual, right? Sahihain, the two Sahih collections, which are what? Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So whenever you see a Sahihain, and of course here, that because it's the dual, the sign of it being mansub or majroor, right, is the ya, as opposed to Sahihan if it's marfu'. So our Prophet ﷺ said in both the Bukhari and Muslim, Man salla subh, subh, fajr, Man salla subh, fahuwa fi dhimmatillah. That person is under the protection of Allah, under the guardianship of Allah Most High. And especially if you pray it in jama'ah. I remember one time, subhanAllah, I learned this lesson. And they say that Tareem is a sheikh for those people who don't have a sheikh. And even the common folk in Tarim, usually they tend to be salihin and righteous, and they teach you matters. So I remember trying to go somewhere, and it was right at the adhan of Isha. And my intention was to pray at the masjid right next door, and I knew there was time. But the guard for the place I was going was locking it up. And I saw him, I said, just let me go in real quick. I'll come right back out. I'm going to be there in time for the takbir tahram of Isha. And he looked at me like something was wrong with me. He's like, do you want me to sleep tonight outside of the dhimma of Allah? You want me to sleep outside of the guardianship of Allah tonight? He's worried that I would take too long and that he missed Salat al-Isha in congregation. And it's just like the way he said it, subhanAllah. Right, yeah, it resonates with you. Right? This is someone who, this person probably doesn't even know how to read or write. They're that simple. But like, that's their iman in their heart. Like, he looked at me like, what's wrong with you? You're a student of knowledge from Dr. Mustafa? And you want to do something that could potentially jeopardize me missing Salat al-Isha in congregation? And even though I was going to be quick, but he's like, no way. And then finally we went and prayed, and then he opened it up after. No. فَلَا يَطْلُبَنَّكُمْ اللَّهُ بِشَيْءٍ مِّن ذِمَّتِهِ Ya Allah. So don't let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala find you that doing something to someone that's under his guardianship. And they used to mention about Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, who murdered a lot of people. He would ask if the people, before he would kill them, which is obviously a horrible thing, if they prayed Fajr in Jama'ah or not. He didn't want to take the life of someone who prayed Fajr in Jama'ah. Like, you shouldn't take your life anyway. But the point is that, there's a protection. That's why we've been trying to encourage the community. At least if you can't make it for other prayers, Fajr, Isha, Fajr, Isha. Some of the students have been missing Fajr and Isha. Notice. So now this is the last of the first 10 days of Ramadan. Then we start the middle 10. So if you've been missing in the first 10, khalas, make a resolution from now on for the remaining 19 or 20 days of Ramadan, you're going to pray every Fajr and Isha at Al-Maqasid in congregation. Tamam? So then he says, وَعَنِ الْإِمَامَيْنِ الْجَلِيلَيْنِ. So he's now going to narrate something on the authority of these two great imams. Imamain, dul, Jalilain. These are great, honorable imams. Who? Abi Hanifa wa Shafi. Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi. Rahimahumullah ta'ala. Qala. What did both of them say? إن لم يكون العلماء أولياء الله فليس لله ولي. If the scholars are not the awliya of Allah, Allah Ta'ala does not have a wali. And yes, it's possible that someone has very little knowledge and then they become one of the awliya. It's possible. There is a famous story of Imam Sha'rani and how he met one of his primary shuyukh. And one of his primary shuyukh was unlettered. He didn't read or write. And Sidi Ali al-Khawas. And Imam Sha'rani was one of the great ulama of his time. And then he passes by him, and that it crossed his heart is that مَتَّخَذَ waliyan jahilan. Allah Ta'ala never took as a wali someone who's ignorant. خطر في البال. And this came by his heart. And then the next day he passed by him. Sheikh Ali al-Khawas says to him, Ya Himar Zainab. What's a Himar? Donkey. That, oh, donkey of Zainab. And he looked at him. And he knew something was different about this person. Because the night before, his wife was really upset with him. And the only way that he could get her to calm down was he said, okay, I'll act like I'm a donkey and you can ride on top of me. Khalas. I'm going to calm you down so you're no longer mad at me. And so he got down on all fours and let his wife ride him like a donkey to like make him happy. So then he passes by Sheikh Aida Khawas the next day, and he says, "Yeah, Imam Zayd," and no one knew about this at all. So he knew he's a person of kashf. And then he said to him, "Is that وَلَوْ اتَّخَذَهُ الْعَلَّمَةِ?" Is that were he to have taken someone as a wali who was ignorant, he would have surely taught him. So there are definitely people that aren't scholars in the outward sciences that are great awliya. Definitely possible, and there's a lot that are like that. But in general, the ulama al-amilin, these are the awliya, the people of knowledge, scholars who put their knowledge into practice. These are the awliya. This is the path to wilayah. And the vast majority, with the rare exception of the awliya in the history of the ummah, had a time in their life where they're doing exactly what you all are doing. Freed up to learn and then put their knowledge into practice. So take advantage of this time, make the right intentions, and have a mashhad, an outlook of what it is you can possibly attain from these opportunities. And were you to know the shuyukh that are behind this work, this is not about Yahya or Yusuf or Amjad or Hassan or any of the teachers here, but were you to know the shuyukh that are behind this work, you would know something of what is possible for every single one of you to attain. Not because of us, despite us and our inability to reflect the teachings of our teachers, despite us. But because of them, were we only to realize that the doors are open. But it requires a mashhad, an outlook on things. It requires intention, and it requires discipline, spiritual struggle, and that submitting to the various taratib that have been laid out for you of what you're supposed to be doing in the right time. But if you're not doing any of the sloop tracker, and you're not taking it serious, and you're acting like it's not there, and Ramadan comes and goes, and it's just like normal, and at the same time, you hear these like, "Oh, I want to become a wali." Yani, it's like someone who doesn't practice very much. I want to go to the NBA. I want to go to the NFL. Okay. And they like never practice and just rely upon their athletic ability. It's like, okay, I want to run a marathon. But overeat and whatever and just khalas. طيب. So then he goes, and this is a really important statement. And he quotes here, and notice he quotes various things about these imams so we can understand who they are. قال الإمام. When we say the word imam in traditional, that's not the way we use it kind of in the Islamic context here in the United States of America. Where I remember mentioning to some people overseas how we call some people here like Imam Fulan or Imam Fulan. They're like, Imam? I thought it was very strange. Now we tend to call someone Imam here who leads the prayer in a masjid. That's a mustalah. But people overseas think that's very strange. Because when you say the word Imam, that means that's a great scholar of the religion, yuqtada bih, that is followed in relation to the deen. Okay. Now, it is what it is. If we call that here, we have to understand what it means and what it doesn't mean. But anyhow, he's calling this great Imam Al-Imam, Al-Hafidh. And when you say they're a Hafidh, this is a person who is skilled and adept in hadith and memorized tens of thousands of a hadith of Rasulullah with their asanid and knows the science of rijal and so forth and so on. Abu al-Qasim is his kunya, Ibn Asakar, radiyallahu rahimahullahu ta'ala. I'lam ya akhi, know, O brother of mine. And then he makes a dua. Waffaqana Allahu wa iyyakum li mardatihi. May Allah give you and I tawfiq, enabling grace to do what is pleasing to him. وَجَعَلَنَا مِمَّنْ يَخْشَاهُ, and to make us to be from those who fear him. وَيَتَّقِي, and have taqwa of him. حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ, in a way that he's deserving. أَنَّ اللُّحُومَ الْعُلَمَاء مَسْمُومَةٌ. Know that the flesh of scholars is poison. In other words, if someone speaks ill of the people of Allah, it's like drinking poison. It's like drinking poison. And this is something we want to learn. But unfortunately, there are people that mention some of the great imams and make fun of them, say bad things about them, deride them, that and these types of things. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This is serious. It's like drinking spiritual poison that kills the heart. And he says, وَعَادَةُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, the way that Allah Ta'ala normally deals with people like this. فِي هَتْكِ أَسْتَارِ مُنْتَقِسِهِمْ مَعْلُومَةً. So, in Allah's custom with those who disparage them is well known. Whoever utters defamation regarding the scholars with his tongue, Allah afflicts him before his death with the death of his heart. Ibtalahu Allah. Allah tries that individual. قَبْلَ مَوْتِ بِمَوْتِ الْقَلْبِ. Before they physically die, that their heart dies. So you will not find the people of Allah. And from the time that I first arrived to Tarim in the year 2000, until this day and age, I have not heard our teachers on a single occasion disparage a single Muslim in 24 years. I've never heard them disparage or say something bad about a single scholar or person in 24 years. Not a single time in the thousands of things that you've heard them say. Not in public gatherings or in private gatherings or even up close in very personal gatherings. This is because it's not how they are. This is their minhaj. This is their methodology. And so we don't speak ill about other people. Our Prophet, if he wanted to clarify what ma balu aqwam, he would speak generally. So we can seek out tendencies of people that tend to do things this way, or that might think this way, or that might do this. We don't mention names of individuals. This is our way. Naam. And then he quotes a verse from the Quran, and let those who go against his command beware lest an affliction befall them or a painful torment. فَلْيَحْذِرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ أَمْرِهِ إِن تُصِيبُهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ وَيُصِيبُهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Those that yukhalifun, they go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command. No. So we want to learn to have adab with the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if someone has a position that you feel is not the best position to have, it's perfectly fine to talk about a position being incorrect, but be very careful to not go beyond that where you find fault with the person themselves. Okay? Like there could be someone who you don't even incline towards much, and you find fault with their positions. That's fine with their positions, but have a good opinion of them and of themselves. Bas. There's a difference between the two. Okay, chapter 4.
Chapter 4, the etiquette of teachers and students of the Quran. This chapter, combined with the two that follow is essentially the aim of this book itself. It is quite long and wide-ranging. I do, however, concisely point out its objectives in sections, facilitating its memorization and accuracy if Allah Most High wills. The intention of the bearers...
So you hear what he's saying? He's saying that he's writing this to be brief so that it can be memorized. Okay, so who has aspiration and is going to memorize what he mentions here? He was saying this is the 7th century. He was saying that he wrote this so that it could be memorized. You just see the difference between us and them. SubhanAllah. طيب. Faslun.
The intention of the bearers of the Quran. First, the teacher and the reciter should engage in the recitation of the Quran for the purpose of gaining the pleasure of Allah Most High. Allah Most High says, and they were ordered no more than to worship Allah sincerely, keeping religion pure for Him, being upright, to establish the prayer, and to give obligatory charity. And that is the worthy religion. Worthy religion here meaning the undeviating creed.
So this is the very first thing that he mentions of all. أَوَّلُ مَا يَنْبَغِي. Yanbaghi is that someone should do something. لِلْمُقْرِئ وَالْقَارِئ. Okay? So the muqra is the teacher. Aqra yuqru is to teach qira'ah. The qara yaqru is to recite qari. So the teacher and the reciter should engage in the recitation of the Quran. What? And yaqsid bidhalika wajhullahi ta'ala. Their only intention should be wajhullah, seeking noble countenance of Allah. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. إِنَّمَا adat al-hasar. This is a particle that restricts the meaning to the single noted meaning here. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ. The only reason we feed you, إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ, is for the sake of Allah. The Quran goes on to say, لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. We do not want any reward, recompense from you, or any thanks. إِنَّمَا نُرِيدُ نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. That is what we want to have at the heart of everything that it is that we do. Let's memorize that verse in Arabic and in English translation. And then when we stand up to pray, right, that means إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. Right, what's mentioned is, but then it's all of our acts. I'm only doing this for the wajh of Allah. I'm only doing this for the wajh of Allah. I'm only doing this for the wajh of Allah. And when you say you're doing something liwajhillah, you're doing it for the sake of Allah. And really what you mean by that is that the only thing that I want to receive as a reward for this is to gaze upon the noble countenance of Allah, which is, of all of the bliss and reward of paradise, the greatest thing that a human being can possibly be rewarded with is to gaze upon the noble countenance of Allah. This is the most fulfilling thing of a human being, for the human being. This is the greatest gift of all in the Dar al-Karama, the abode of the hereafter, is to gaze upon the noble countenance of Allah. And a woman can be granted that. A man can be granted that. Someone from America could be granted that. Someone from Africa could be granted that. Someone from some country in Asia could be granted that. A poor person could be granted that. A rich person could be granted that. And all these different distinctions that people have here in this world, all of that fades away. And what ultimately matters, true success is defined, and to what degree do we gaze upon the noble countenance of Allah in the hereafter. So all of these distinctions will fade. And all of these distinctions are there in order to try us to see what we do with them. And what ultimately matters is that we respond to our unique individual circumstances in a way that is most pleasing to Him. And the secret to the gaze upon the noble counsel of Allah is to maximize our Adamic potential that we have by virtue of being a human being and the son of Adam or a daughter of Adam. And then specifically in relation to who we are and everything Allah has given us as individuals. If we maximize our potential, that is the secret for us to attaining the rida, the contentment of Allah, which is the secret of us to attain a perpetual gaze upon the noble countenance of Allah. That is fawz and that is falah. And if we can have the ummah understand that, and then all of their pursuits are done with that in mind, with that intention, with that motivation. Allahu Akbar. If you combine to that a knowledge of what it is that they're doing, imagine the impact that these individuals will have upon the world in which we live. Allah will take it upon Himself to rectify situations that you don't think are possible to rectify. Allah will take it upon Himself to give you ways out of situations that you feel you're stuck in. Because Allah is Qadir. Kulli shay. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the very first thing He mentions. And then, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا. This is Quran. They have not been commanded to do anything except لِيَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ. Worship Allah. مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Being sincere to Him in religion. حُنَفَاءُ. Meaning being upright. وَيُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. And that is the al-millat al-mustaqima, the upright religion. And so, again, this is one of the shorter surahs that we recite, Surah Al-Bayyinah. And again, every time we say, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. We put that into practice by coming to learn in more detail about what ikhlas is, and this is what he's going to help us with here, inshallah ta'ala. وَفِي الصَّحِيحَيْن.
It is related in the Sahihain that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Actions are only valued according to their intentions, and each person has only what he has intended." This hadith is one of the foundations of Islam. We relate that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma said, "A man is protected only to the degree of his intention." Another has said, "People are only given to the degree of their intentions."
Okay. So then he quotes this hadith, which is the first hadith in Sahih Bukhari. And incidentally, alhamdulillah, we finalized the date for Sahih Bukhari. We're going to be reading Sahih Bukhari in the Musalla here, inshallah, from August 20th to 30th. So I'd highly recommend, this is a golden opportunity to read Sahih Bukhari, which is, as we've learned, is the most authentic book after the Quran. So inshallah, if we read it all from cover to cover, it'll take about 10 days, and it's rigorous. It's not easy, it's rigorous, but it's well worth it. And nothing impacts the heart more after verses from the Quran than hearing blessed hadith of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that here, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, we all know this hadith, and actions are only by intentions. And he translates it here as actions are only, in brackets, valued according to their intentions. So scholars differ about what you put in brackets here. Is it their sihha? Is it their legal validity and so forth? Or is it their value? And so he has a note here. He says, this is the first hadith in Imam Nawawi's 40 hadith. Scholars differ in interpreting the phrase, actions are only by their intentions, in the A'malu binniyat, which on the surface equates actions and intentions. The Hanafis say the complete reward for actions hinges on intention, while the Shafi'is and Hanbalis hold that the soundness of an action hinges on intention. So, for instance, and this gets back to the way that the scholars understand law. That's why in the Hanafi school, it's not an obligation to make an intention for wudu. If you just wash your face and wash the 4 limbs with the wiping, if you wash the 3 limbs and wipe the head, that's sufficient. It doesn't have to be in any order. As long as you do it, you're good. In the Shafi schools, it wouldn't be valid because you didn't make the intention, as well as the Maliki school, the intention is required as well. The difference is part of the reason why the Hanafis do not consider intention a condition for the soundness of ablution, contrary to the Shafi'is and Hanbalis. So Sheikh Musa had studied Hanbali fiqh when he was in Syria. And so he's one of the few Western scholars that have a knowledge of Hanbali fiqh. And he studied it there was a masjid in Damascus that teaches Hanbali fiqh with an unbroken chain back to Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And there's a few places in the Muslim world that are like that. Now, and then the next narration, إِنَّمَا يَحْفَظُ الرَّجُلُ عَلَى قَدْرِ نِيَّتِهِ. And he translates that here is that a man is protected only to the degree of his intention. And this might also as well be, someone will only memorize according to the degree of their intention. Okay, meaning that how strong is our intention in relation to memorizing? It's good to strengthen our memories. وَعَنْ غَيْرِ إِنَّمَا يُعْطَى النَّاسِ عَلَى قَدْرِ نِيَّتِهِمْ. Indeed, as some of them have said, people are only given to the degree of their intentions. So you see the importance of intention here? إِنَّمَا يُعْطَى النَّاسِ عَلَى قَدْرِ نِيَّتِهِمْ. What is our intention? Or what are our intentions? And how strong are they? How vast are they? How frequently do we make them? So intentions are really, really key here. Now he's going to get into a little bit about some of the early scholars, what they said about ikhlas, sincerity.
We relate that the master Abu al-Qasim al-Qushayri, Allah Most High grant him mercy, said, "Sincerity is to single out the real Allah in obedience with full intention." Meaning, through obedience, a worshipper desires only to draw near to Allah Most High, nothing else, not ostentation for the sake of others, gaining praise with people, loving praise from them, or something else that shows an objective other than drawing closer to Allah Most High. He said, "It is correct to say that sincerity is purifying the action from being observed by people."
What a blessing to have this in English. This is one of the golden statements, and that come back to this. Anyone asks you what ikhlas is, it's right there, and now you have easy access to it. So he says, وَرَوَيْنَا عَنْ الْأُسْتَاذ. He says that we are narrating from the al-Ustadh. Ustadh is a title that we use very differently nowadays as well. Right? Ustadh is like a teacher. But here it's like al-Ustadh. This is why he translates it here as the master. And he was a master of the spiritual path and took students by the hand. That was what an Ustadh was during this time. This is why they refer to the great Imam of the Ba'adawi path, Sayyidina al-Faqih Muqaddam, they call him al-Ustadh al-A'lam, the greatest teacher, because of that skillful way to set down a way for people that travel to the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through that way. So he says, al-ikhlas, what is it? Ifrad al-haqqi fi ta'a bil-qasd. Sincerity is to single out the real Allah. And why do you use the word here, al-haq? Right? Because anytime that we have something pollute our intention, we're seeking something that is ultimately vanishing and it's fake. Ala kullu shay'in ma khala Allah. Ala kullu shay'in ma khala Allah batin. It isn't anything other than Allah. False. Wa kullu na'imin la mahalata za'ilu. And all pleasures that there's no way around it are going to perish. So ifrad al-haq fi ta'a wal-qasd. Singling out the real Allah in obedience with full intention. Meaning that what? وهو أن يريد بطاعة التقرب إلى الله تعالى دون شيء آخر. How do we describe this? Meaning through obedience, a worshipper desires only to draw near to Allah Most High. That's what we always want to bring ourselves back to. Anything that we do, check yourself. Check your intention in the beginning of that act. Why am I doing this? And then insert this meaning. It's that I'm doing this for Allah. And even if in the beginning stages, your nafs wants its portion and it wants to do it for another reason. This is where spiritual struggle comes in, is that you insert this intention. Like, no, this is why I'm doing it. And your nafs pulls you to do it for some of these other reasons. To get praise of people, or that to show off in some way, or some other reason, to receive some worldly benefit or something of it. Your nafs wants that. And it very well might be in the early stages that you're making a sincere intention and your nafs is pulling you towards that. This is where you got to struggle. And if you struggle with the nafs, finally your nafs will submit. And your actions become unadulterated and 100% pure. Lillahi Jalla Jalaluhu. In Al-Maqasid, he says, what happens if you're 75% sincere and 25% insincere is that to the degree that you're insincere is to the degree that it takes from the reward that you get for the action. So if you're 60% sincere and you're 40% insincere in terms of the percentage of motivation, then you have a remaining 20%, and you still get a little bit of reward for it. Right, but the danger is if you're 75% insincere and 25% sincere. The punishment for that's not as bad as the punishment of being 5% sincere and 95% insincere. So it goes both ways. The goal is that we want to be 100% sincere. That's, what does it mean? As he says here. The only thing that we're intending is the noble countenance of Allah. We want to draw near to Allah. And he gives us these other examples of wanting praise from people or something from people other than that drawing near to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. It is correct to say that sincerity is purifying the action from being observed by people. So really what we mean by sincerity is eliminating people from the picture. So that's our job. When we act, is that we don't do it for people. We train ourselves. We're in training ground now to make sure everything we do is sincere. And it takes time. And we don't fully become sincere, so sincerity is a process. We have to very at least start. And if we die trying, Allah Ta'ala will overlook from His bounty, subhanahu wa ta'ala. We die trying to become sincere. But our goal is to be fully sincere. And the great Imams who came before us, this is one of the greatest secrets why you and I are now reading their works about 900 years later, or 800 and something years later, is because of their sincerity. Imam Shafi said, I wish to have served knowledge and not a single letter be attributed to me. A single letter. Right? So imagine if you donate money, you do something for someone, right? You write a book, you bring about the scenario in your mind that no one ever knows that you were the one that donated. No one ever knows that you wrote that book, even though we sign our names to books so people know who they're reading. But would we be content? Or are we only going to be happy if people start to know that we are the ones that did it? That means there's a deficiency in our sincerity. But you can start to see here why that, inshallah, in the future, when you all are in a position where you're serving the deen in some capacity, is it why these meetings are so important? Because if someone hasn't learned that, and they're serving, and they're actually just filled with riya, and they love people's praise, and they're happy when people praise them, and they start developing all of these spiritual diseases as a result in the heart, thinking that they're special and looking down upon other people and all that. What's the benefit of serving then if it's going to that lead to your destruction? طيب. So Hudayfa
al-Mar'ashi Al-Mar'ashi, Allah Most High grant him mercy, said, sincerity is the worshipper's actions, being identical in what is manifest and what is hidden.
Ya Allah, this is so hard. Sincerity is hard. Istiwa af'al al-'abd fi al-zahir wal-batin. Your outward is the same as your inward. It's the same. Istiwa. It's the same. It takes work. It takes work. طيب.
Dhunnun, Allah Most High grant him mercy, said, 3 signs of sincerity are when praise and censure from masses are equal, forgetting to see your involvement in deeds, and wanting reward for one's action in the hereafter. Al-Fudul ibn Iyad.
Okay, so we'll stop here on this one. So Dhunnun al-Masri, he's buried in Cairo. Rahimahullah ta'ala wa nafa'ana bih. These great imams are great imams of this deen that we should love and want to follow. He says that what? ثلاث من علامات الإخلاص. There are 3 that these are from among the signs of sincerity. استواء المدح والذم من العامة. And the first is what? Praise and censure from the masses are equal. So whether people praise you or whether they criticize you, it's equal from the common folk. So just look where we're at when it comes to that. Imagine if someone came up to you and like criticized you. Said like, "Beak, kida, kida, kida." Right? Why do you do kida, kida, kida? Right? Where are we? That our whole day would be ruined, our whole week might be ruined, and we just khalas, I'm gonna give up. Never can be anything. This person criticized me. Right? But then the bigger test is when people praise you. So if we want to become a da'i Allah and serve the da'wah and a teacher and give classes, give sermons, help people in the community, is that the sign that we're sincere is that whether people praise us or whether they insult us, it's the same. In other words, is that we don't get deceived by people's praise. nor do we get demotivated by people's criticism. And in fact, is that if someone criticizes us, we actually listen to them. Maybe they have a good point. And we actually listen very carefully to what they say to see if there's some truth in what they're saying. And it varies like, marhaba. Because we actually already see ourselves as worse and in need of more criticism than their criticism. And then when people praise us, if there's something good in us that they're saying, is that, first of all, we say that if they really knew us, they wouldn't say that. And secondly, Ya Rab, if there is some good in it, it's from your bounty anyway. Imam Haddad said, if I was ever praised, I take that praise and I deflect it. And I deflect it into the ocean of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because if they're praising me about anything, they're only praising something ultimately than the one who deserves to be praised, which is Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I deflect it and realize they're not praising me, they're praising him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is just the first one. And the second one, Nisyanu ru'yat al-a'mal fil a'mal. And the second is to forget to see your involvement in deeds. This gets a little bit more subtle. Nisyan, forgetting the ru'ya of a'mal, in the a'mal. The ru'ya is you seeing your actions while you're acting. Okay. So in other words, is that you don't see them as being from yourself. You forget that you're actually the one doing it. You're so immersed in the worship of Allah that you fail to see it emanating from you, or you're the one doing it. You forget that, such that you cease to see you being the one who's doing it. And then the last, وَاقْتِضَاءُ ثَوَابِ الْأَعْمَالِ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. Wanting reward for one's actions in the hereafter. And to the extent that we benefit from our actions that we do here in the world is to the extent that we receive less in the hereafter. The less we benefit from our actions here, the more we benefit from our actions in the hereafter. And Allah Ta'ala sometimes brings about benefit of actions that we do here in this world. But the key here is that we don't jump on that and be like, yes, this is the reward of my actions that I'm doing. And just, I'm going to enjoy the things of this world as a result. That we should be cautious. And that want to do actions where we receive a full reward. And I think we've probably already mentioned before, as Sayyidah Aisha, we've mentioned this many times actually, is that she used to send someone when she was giving charity to have that person listen to the du'as that were being said. This is amazing. This is the way that the companions were. Who did they learn from? The best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when that person would make du'as, the person she sent would then convey the du'as that that person made. So she would make the same du'as for him or her, whoever that she was giving it to. And a du'a was for a du'a, and her reward was from Allah. She didn't want her reward to be that person's du'a, even though it's a great thing to have people make du'a for you. Higher than that is to have the reward directly come. So you start to see how these people are. We've only just taken a few passages. We could go through this book very quickly and read 3 or 4 pages a day. It's possible. But you start to see how these people are in depth. What is their internal makeup? What are the meanings that all of their religious practice is built upon? All of the decisions they make is built upon. Their perspectives on the world, what is it built upon? What is their internal makeup? Nothing is more important in this time that we spend, in the year or 2 years, however long that we have together here, than to start this process of attaining a completely pure heart that is completely devoted to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And then if that's the case, you start to add to that a little bit of knowledge and a little bit more knowledge. Oh, then you're going to really be a benefit. Bismillah ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq and open up the doors for us to experience these meanings. Ya Arhamar Rahim, protect our tongues. Bless us to be able to love the ulama, to love the awliya. and to only use our tongues for the purpose for which they were created. Ya Arhamar Rahim. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala bless us a strong connection to them. And through our love of them, bless us to be able to follow in their footsteps, inshallah ta'ala, and to resemble them and to be able to experience something of what Allah Ta'ala blessed them with. Ya Arhamar Rahim. Especially in this blessed month of Ramadan. Ya Arhamar Rahim. Blessed to be able to love those who fast the fast of the elect, let alone those who fast the fast of the elect, and have glimpses in these months, Ya Allah, where our fast can ascend and to resemble those who fast in this way, Ya Arhamar Rahim, as we transition out of the first 10 days, which are days of mercy, according to our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We ask Ya Allah that we transition out of these days and we've received a comprehensive mercy, the fruits of which is that we continue to see the rest of this month, all throughout the upcoming year, all throughout our lives, and in the barzakh, and in Yawm al-Qiyamah, and eternally, Ya Arhamar Rahim. May we be from the elect of those who enter into these mid-10 days of maghfirah and forgiveness, wherein which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives us of all of our sins and change all of our past sins into good deeds. Ya Arhamar Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.